We took part in a march and a demonstration on Tuesday, my wife Julie and our daughter Tristan and I. It was organized by black clergy of the Twin Cities, and it was to be a march of clergy with black clergy leading the march, white clergy behind them having their back, and then other allies behind the white clergy backing the whole thing. And it started just east of Nicollet on 38th Street and went 7-8 blocks or so from that spot to the corner of Chicago and 38th where George Floyd died, where he was killed. Walking along with this huge crowd of strangely dressed people, I was noticing these little houses in this neighborhood, tucked in tightly against each other with little yards up close to the street. And noticing moms with children, little kids, out on the sidewalk and on the curb, watching us go by like some really boring parade. And I wondered, what do they think of this? What's going through the minds of those children as they watch? Children of all colors and sizes and ages. And I wondered, what must it be like to grow up in such a setting as this? Because, well, we are in part the product of the things that we are exposed to, what we soak up from our environment. And so I invite you to think about the people and the places and the events that form and inform your life and shaped you as a young person. What are those places, those people, those things that feed you still and sometimes pop to the surface? And the reason I ask is because I had one of those silly things, or maybe not so silly, come up on the wheel and get spit out. And I was telling Julie that I remember learning about the magic words, quote unquote, from Captain Kangaroo. Ridiculous name for a goofy character on a corny, silly TV program in the morning that was all about and for kids. This was pre-Mr. Rogers. But I loved Captain Kangaroo, goofy as he was, corny as he was my friend. This was for children before you went to school, preschool kids then. That was our preschool, I guess, Captain Kangaroo. And I learned about the magic words. Do you know what the magic words are? Please and thank you. Yes, I'm hearing it from... Yes, okay, so it's not just me. Captain Kangaroo reinforced polite societal behavior through this program for kids. Please and thank you are the magic words. Now I wonder, are those words, as important as they are to me and to us, are they as important and formational for children who live in the neighborhood of 38th and Chicago as are the words, "Don't shoot, I'm not armed," or "Please, I can't breathe"? What is it like to live in that setting now? What does that event, the death of that black man at the knee and the hands of a white policeman, or several of them, now become a memorial site? What does that do? How does that form and inform a young life? What does that do to a child? In a beginning, when there was nothing, there was darkness, there was emptiness, but there was water, interestingly enough, as the story is told, because people in the Mideast know that water is essential for life, and they don't take it for granted. And maybe even God needs water. We don't know. But in the beginning, there's nothing, and it's dark, and it's formless, it's empty, but there's water. And there is the breath of God, this wind, just this breeze, moving over the smooth face of this water. And then God, I hear God clearing God's throat. getting ready to speak. And the vibration, the energy in the air changes, right, PD? There's something that begins to happen, and the water starts to ripple. And then God starts to speak. And it's just a voice. It's just sound, but you know voices can affect you, right? I still, in the wintertime, sometimes wake up with that voice in my ear, hit the deck, you guys, there's snow to be shoveled. My dad's voice that I heard again and again and again. The voice of Reverend Al Sharpton at the service on Thursday. Some of you maybe don't like him, but that voice moved people, and it moved us, even people who didn't appreciate it. That was powerful stuff. The voice of God over this water, and God begins to speak, and light and darkness happen and separate and distinguish from each other. And then the sky and the sea happens, and the dry land is created. It occurs as the water moves away, recedes, and recoalesces in another place. And so there's land for things to grow. And birds to fill the air happen, and sea creatures to fill the water happen. And earthbound creatures are spoken into being, those things that walk around and creep around. We joked at the Bible study about creeping things. That's not the creeps on the earth, that's the things that creep on the earth. There's plenty of creeps too, we know, but we're not going there. And all of that occurs because God speaks it into being according to this story, over against other creation stories, because the people who wrote the story knew other stories, and we're in the midst of other stories. And then we happen. Human beings occur, spoken into existence, spoken into being. And we are put here to serve and protect the creation. Actually, that's not what the first story says. That's what the second story says in chapter 2. And the Hebrew words are literally to serve and protect, just like the police are to serve and protect, which I find really interesting. In the first story, we're here to do what? To have dominion. A form of that word is very popular these days, to dominate. And I wonder if the second story wasn't put there side by side with the first one, in part to counter that story, to serve and protect over against domination, because as we're learning again and again, domination is not sustainable. If you dominate something or someone, eventually it flips on you. It's not sustainable. It does not work. It's not wise. It's not good. And the stories are there to talk about the balance. So we're created and placed here, and then the story ends with what? The Sabbath. What we're doing here. Time to rest. Shabbat, the Hebrew word for rest, for review, for declaration of the goodness of creation, for celebrating it, for taking it in and reviewing and reinforcing and living into the relationships that we're given. The creation is not complete until the Sabbath happens. It needs it. It is needed. Now, there's two things I would invite you to. There's all kinds of stuff in this story, but two things I would invite you to take note of. One, and we talked about this at the Bible story. I find this fascinating, or the Bible study. When God is about to create human beings, God seems to enter into a discussion, a conversation that hasn't been happening before. Everything before, God just creates, just speaks it into being. But God says, let us now make humankind in our image. Us. Our. Who's that? Who's us? Who's our? Is that some sort of creation advisory panel that we haven't heard about before now? Is it the heavenly host, whatever that is? Who is around for God to be talking with? it's the rest of creation that has been spoken into being and is watching and listening. And so God says to the mountains and the water and the birds and the fish and everything else, let us make humankind in our image. What do you think? Is that a good idea? What do you think? That's not in there. I'm adding that because I think it should be in there. And if that's what the story is saying, it further suggests that we are created with this dual image woven into us, with, if you will, the double helix DNA of heaven and earth wound inside of us. We are the meeting place, each of us. And if that's true, then that challenges us and calls us ever deeper into responsible, conscious relationship with the divine and with the earthly, because they're woven together in us. We're here for both. I love that concept. I think that's fascinating. I don't know if the rest of you do. You can send in your comments. That's fine. You comment on that. Send them to PD, and we'll see. There we go. The second thing I want you to take note of is not in the text, but in the context. Now, this creation story has been around a long time. These people carry it with them, and they retell this story, and it's been around in some form for centuries. And it's told around the fire, and it's told to their children. But it's most likely put into written form during the Babylonian exile, about 550 BCE. At that point, the temple has been destroyed by the Babylonians, Jerusalem has been trashed, and citizens of Jerusalem and Judea have been enslaved and marched off to serve in a foreign land. How would you characterize such a time? It's dark. It's empty, it's broken, it's chaotic, it's smoldering. It's nothing for them. There's nothing in it for them. It's empty. And as they're hanging out in Babylon, lamenting their fate, somebody says, hey, wait a minute. This sounds and seems familiar to me. A formless void, no life, no nothing in it, darkness. What does that remind you of? We have a story for this. We have a story. This is what we come from. This is what we arise out of. I know this is a mess, and nobody wants this as it is now, but this is right in God's wheelhouse. This is what God does God's best work with. So it may be, as much as we hate being here, in this mess, this ugliness, this brokenness, that we are right where we need to be. It may be that right about now we are going to see and experience the emergence of a whole new God-ordered, God-created, God-blessed, God-beloved, creative order all around us and even within us. That's a possibility. That's why we rehearse the story. We tell it again and again. It's not the first time we've been in an empty, broken place. So, a little confession, and this just stays here. Nobody talks about this. Nobody else needs to know, but I did not want to go. I did not want to go on the march on Tuesday because I am an anxious sort, and I am fearful of a lot of things, and because I knew full well that I didn't belong there. I don't belong in that part of town. I don't belong in such a place. I don't belong with those. I have this thing about belonging and feeling at home where I am. It's been my whole life, and so I struggle with that. So it hits me with every new thing that this is not where you shouldn't be here. You don't belong here. This is not for you. That was the big thing that made me feel like I don't want to go. The other thing was clergy are supposed to wear something so that they're identifiable, recognizable as clergy, which I avoid doing all the time. So I don't want people to know what I do because people act weird with clergy. They do strange things. They say strange stuff. I get all these confessions about, well, I haven't been to church in 18 years, but I'm going to go this week just because I had this conversation with you. Yeah, well, anyway. So But I felt obligated. And I knew I would feel guilty if I didn't go. And my wife wanted to go, and my daughter wanted to go, our daughter. And so you got to go. Yeah, you're the man of the family, right? So I drag out this clergy collar, the thing, and I put that on. I never wear that, but I wore it for this with a pair of shorts and sandals. And it was supposed to be like 100 degrees, the heat index. It was just a heavy, ugly day. And we drove and picked Tristan up. She lives not far from where the march was to happen. And then we went and parked our car just off of 38th, right east of the Seward Community Co-op. And got out of the car and joined this growing crowd of people who were forming in the parking lot of the Sabathani Community Center there on 38th Street. And as we're standing there in the corner of the parking lot, kind of not apart from everybody, but trying to keep, everybody's masked, of course, and everybody's wearing their clergy garb, those who are clergy. And we're sort of trying to keep away from people a little bit, waiting for our marching orders. And just the sadness and the heaviness and the brokenness and the emptiness of this whole thing just sort of settled in me, and I felt vividly empty. My own void. And then this young black man steps up and stands beside us. He's dressed in this black clergy shirt with the white band collar and a black suit with black dress shoes and a black baseball cap with a white cross and chaplain on the front. He is clergy, and he's declaring it to the world. He's not hiding it from anybody. He wants everybody to know. And he starts talking to us. He says, "Hello. I am so glad you came today. I'm so glad you're here. It's so good that you came to be part of this day. I'm so happy that you're here." And he is either the best actor in the world or it's genuine. And he is genuinely delighted, and he is truly a delightful human being. And I am disarmed and charmed and dragged in, and suddenly I realize this is where I need to be. I am right where I belong because he said so. His name is DeVille Hodge. He's an elder in the Church of God in Christ, a black denomination. And the building that he works out of is a couple blocks just east and a little south of where we're gathering. And he is an elder, a full elder in this church. And we start talking about church, of course, and about being church and how hard it is to be church now because we're separated and we can't get together safely. We're going to talk about that some more this week. And how it's the older folks in the church. He said, in my church, it's the old people that want to come, and they're the people that shouldn't go anywhere. They're the folks that love the church. He says, I'm a millennial. We're relaxed about this sort of thing. We got all kinds of stuff to do. So coming to church, we got a variety of things. He was funny. He was sweet. He was so kind. If you have Wednesday's paper, the Star Tribune, front page, the big picture on the front page, on the right, second row, there's DeVille with the baseball cap on. You can see him. You can meet him from a distance. But here's the thing. That young black man in the black suit with the black clergy collar and the black baseball cap, who is from a very different place than I am, whose theology, I'm sure, contrasts with my own intensely, who's formed and informed by experiences I have not had. He was the voice of God for me, speaking into and over my own inner chaos and emptiness and out of placeness when he said, I am so glad you're here. This is exactly where you belong. I'm so glad you're here. He was the voice of Jesus for one of Jesus' doubtful, distant followers when he said, I'm with you always. And I know you have doubts, and I know you have fears. I am with you always until this thing is complete. You are not alone ever. You are right where you need to be. You belong here, and I'm with you. If he could do that for me in that place, if he could be that for me in that place, then why in the world can you and I not do that and be that for one another? I don't think there's any reason why not. So, in conclusion, you like those, right? I want you to repeat after me, if you will. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so glad you're here.
I am so glad you're here.
I am so glad you're here.
You belong here.
You belong here.
This is the very place you are needed.
This is the very place you are needed.
And I am with you always. Until this whole thing is complete.
Until this whole thing is complete.
In Christ. Amen.